The following program contains descriptions of suicide and sensitive themes. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, my name is Latasha. The Medgar Library asked me to talk to you because September is National Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, and because of my background, I wanted to talk to you about suicide prevention, mainly because I am a suicide survivor. I'm sharing my picture because I want you to be aware that on the outside, someone who is dealing with suicidal thoughts may look pretty average. A person who's thinking about suicide doesn't have a certain look. You never know. You just never know. According to Merriam-Webster.com, suicide is the act or an instance of taking one's own life voluntarily and intentionally. Suicidal thoughts, much like mental health conditions, can affect anyone, regardless of age, gender, or background. In fact, suicide is often a result of an untreated mental health condition. Suicidal thoughts, although common, should not be considered normal and often indicate more serious issues. September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month, a time to raise awareness on this stigmatized and often taboo topic. 78% of all people who die by suicide are male. Although more women than men attempt suicide, men are nearly 4 times more likely to die by suicide. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 34 and the 10th leading cause of death overall in the United States. The overall suicide rate in the U.S. has increased by 35% since 1999. 46% of people who die by suicide had a diagnosed mental health condition. While nearly half of individuals who die by suicide have a diagnosed mental health condition, research shows that 90% experience symptoms. How prevalent are serious thoughts of suicide each year in the United States? Well, 4.8% of all adults, 11.8% of young adults aged 18 to 25, 18.8% of high school students, and 46.8% of lesbian, gay, and bisexual high school students have considered suicide. Some of the highest rates of suicide in the United States are among Native American, Alaska Native, and non-Hispanic white communities. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than straight youth. Transgender adults are nearly 12 times more likely to attempt suicide than the general population, and suicide is the leading cause of death for people held in local jails. In the age of the COVID-19 pandemic, now more than ever, it's important to talk about suicide prevention, since the rate of anxiety and depression may have increased among many due to isolation and concern about illness and death. During National Suicide Prevention Month, mental health advocates, prevention organizations, survivors, allies, and community members unite to promote suicide prevention awareness. This includes National Suicide Prevention Week, which is the Monday through Sunday surrounding World Suicide Prevention Day on September 10th. World Suicide Prevention Day is a time to remember those affected by suicide, to raise awareness, and to focus efforts on directing treatment to those who need it most. It's common to believe that if you think someone is having suicidal thoughts and you want to talk about it with them, you think that they will be encouraged to die by suicide. However, the opposite is the case. You are more likely to prevent a suicide attempt if you bring it up. So, what should you do if you think a person is having suicidal thoughts? Well, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline has some tips on how you can intervene. First, ask the person directly if he or she is having suicidal thoughts or ideas, has a plan to do so, and has access to lethal means. Sample questions include, are you thinking about killing yourself? Have you ever tried to hurt yourself before? Do you think you might try to hurt yourself today? Have you thought of ways that you might hurt yourself? Do you have pills or weapons in the house? Now, as uncomfortable as these questions may be, this won't increase the person's suicidal thoughts. It will give you information that indicates how strongly the person has thoughts about killing him or herself. Take seriously all suicide threats and all suicide attempts, because a past history of suicide attempts is one of the strongest risk factors for death by suicide. Most importantly, there is no evidence that no suicide contracts prevent suicide. In fact, it may just give you a false sense of reassurance. Next, listen and look for red flags for suicidal behavior indicated by the mnemonic is path warm. I stands for ideation. Threatened or communicated. Have they indicated at any time that they've considered suicide? S is for substance abuse. Increase in substance abuse or excessive substance abuse. Purposeless. Does a person indicate that they feel they have no reason to live? Anxiety. Agitation or insomnia. Do you see those in this person? T is for trapped. Does a person feel there is no way out of their situation? H is for hopelessness. Does a person indicate that they feel there is no hope for the future? W is for withdrawing. Is the person withdrawing from friends, family, or society in general? Anger. Does it typically seem to be uncontrolled anger at that? Rage or seeking revenge against someone? Recklessness. Does the person tend to commit risky acts or not thinking ahead before doing something? Do they tend to fly off the handle? And M is for mood changes, especially if mood changes are dramatic. Major mood swings or ups and downs. Do you see that in this person? And finally, act. If you think the person might harm him or herself, do not leave the person alone. Say, I'm going to get you some help. Call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. 1-800-273-8255. You'll be connected to the nearest available crisis center. Or go to SAMHSA's Mental Health Services Locator or Substance Abuse Treatment Facility Locator online. Now, the protocol I just mentioned is from a suicide risk assessment that's recommended for counselors, but I felt that this information would be helpful for the general public, just so you're aware of what to look for. Otherwise, remembering all that information may be a challenge for you. So, be sure to either take a screenshot or write down this number, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Counselors are available at that number 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is also a chat option on their website, suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also call 911 for assistance, especially if the person has already started the process of attempting to die by suicide, because it's a life-threatening situation at that point. Let's say the person doesn't really want to talk to someone, or maybe you're considering suicide and you don't want to talk to someone directly. What you can do is send a text. Text the word NAMI, N-A-M-I, to 741-741 to start a text conversation with a counselor. I'll note here for future reference, in 2022, look for an announcement regarding the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There will be a new 3-digit number similar to 911 to make it easy for people to remember. The number that should be launched around July of 2022 is 988. Now, it's not launched yet, so please continue to note the 1-800 number. So once again, if you or someone you know was having thoughts of suicide, please call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. The number is 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. You can also start a chat at suicidepreventionlifeline.org. For someone who is in immediate danger, please call 911 for assistance. If you prefer to text instead of speak to someone over the phone, you can text the word NAMI to 741-741. Speaking of NAMI, NAMI Mississippi, the state chapter of the National Alliance on Mental Illness, also has crisis resources on its website, namims.org. That's namims.org. For general information, you can call NAMI Mississippi at 601-899-9058 for information about support groups and education programs. Note that this number is not a crisis line. You can also email NAMI Mississippi at stateoffice@namims.org. That's stateoffice@namims.org. Oh, and one more thing. Even though I did list some signs and symptoms of someone who may have suicidal ideation, note that some people who are considering suicide may not show any sort of symptoms that would indicate sadness or frustration. Some people are able to put up a front that everything is okay, when deep down they are very troubled. So keep that in mind, and if you suspect that a person may be having suicidal thoughts, go ahead and start that conversation. It can be in person, over the phone, or a text message. But just get that conversation started. It could save a life. Thank you for your time.